We know the pressure because of the text messages that have been made public, that Charlie was under a lot of pressure from a lot of pro-Israel donors.
And Jewish donors, they have a lot of explaining to do, a lot of decoupling to do. And it's not just the colleges. It's the nonprofits. It's the movies. It's Hollywood. It's all of it. It's like time for you guys to wake up and say no more. Draw a line in the sand. I don't care if you hate me.
Charlie and I have always been very clear on our stance. Israel, Jewish people.
Is significantly underwriting the Israeli government $4 billion a year. We as American taxpayers deserve answers to this. You better keep asking questions because it's the only thing that keeps us free.
Erika Kirk just had a crazy meltdown.
Erika Kirk reportedly had an absolute meltdown after Joe Kent came forward and said he is willing to testify in the Charlie Kirk assassination trial. As many of you already know, Joe Kent was Trump's top counterterrorism official, but he recently resigned after forcefully opposing a U.S. war with Iran. In his resignation letter, he said Iran posed no threat to the United States and that he could not support sending Americans into what he believed would be another unnecessary war. He also suggested that outside pressure was helping drive U.S. involvement. And what makes this so explosive is that everything he wrote sounds almost identical to the warnings Charlie Kirk was making in the months before his assassination. But Erika and Turning Point allegedly do not want the public connecting those dots. In fact, they are now accused of deleting episodes of Charlie's podcast to bury what he really believed about this war and the pressure surrounding it. But it gets even darker. Candace Owens has now pulled back the curtain on what she describes as blatant deception by Erika, TPUSA, and Andrew Colvett, pointing to Charlie's own text messages where he said he was being threatened by Turning Point donors. Those messages have been circulating for months, yet now Erika and Turning Point are suddenly blaming Joe Kent for leaking them. And unbelievably, they are even demanding that Joe be prosecuted. But Joe and Candace are not backing down. And if Joe Kent is now willing to testify under oath, that raises a chilling possibility. He may be sitting on information that could blow the entire lone wolf narrative to pieces. So let's talk about Erika's alleged crash out after learning Joe Kent may testify in Tyler Robinson's trial. According to insiders close to Turning Point, Erika erupted in front of staff, raging at Joe Kent, calling him evil and demonic, and even allegedly ordering people around her to smear him publicly and accuse him of criminal conduct. And now that is exactly what Turning Point loyalists appear to be doing. First up, Ben Shapiro stepped in to brand Joe Kent a conspiracy theorist and claimed Joe was the one who illegally leaked sensitive information about Charlie's assassination to Candace Owens.
I do not believe that Joe Kent didn't leak those texts to Candace Owens. After all, it is Candace Owens who routinely claims that she had inside intelligence sources in the government.
Meanwhile, Blake Neff and Andrew Colvett, who are now filling in as hosts of The Charlie Kirk Show, seem to have their own on-air meltdown after learning Joe Kent is prepared to testify in the trial. They immediately rushed to slap the same label on him, conspiracy theorist.
Because they care more about their conspiracy theories than about the person who murdered my friend facing justice. I am fed up with it.
And meanwhile, you have government officials that are now saying on the record to journalists they are willing to testify on behalf of the defense to get Tyler Robinson off the hook for something that he did.
And then it got worse. Andrew Colvett flatly denied what was in Charlie's messages. He claimed Charlie never once said anything about Turning Point donors threatening him.
He knew that trans Tifa was going to come after him, and he was worried about that. That's the truth. Never mentioned one time about the Jews. Okay? Never once.
But Charlie's own words appear to tell a very different story. We have messages where Charlie said those donors were playing into every stereotype and were bullying him. And beyond the text, there are multiple clips of Charlie speaking on his show, in interviews and on college campuses, where he described being smeared simply for asking questions.
America is significantly underwriting the Israeli government $4 billion a year. We as American taxpayers deserve answers to this. We deserve answers. Also, if we're going to get into a regional or world war based on an intel failure, so, I mean, we pay for this. What are we buying, right? I got smeared as a Jew hater, an anti-Semite, and conspiracy theorist because I said exactly what I just said. And I refuse to back down despite all the smears thrown at me.
Fast forward to now, and those same smears are being recycled against Joe Kent. CNN's Jake Tapper has now publicly accused Joe Kent of anti-Semitism. Again, simply for asking questions and doing what Charlie himself was doing before they silenced him.
Blames Israel for the war in Iran, blames Israel for the war in Iraq, blames Israel and its supporters for ISIS, for the war on ISIS in Syria. And I think there are a lot of people today wondering, how did somebody like this get a position like this in government given his anti-Semitic views?
But here is where the hypocrisy becomes impossible to ignore. These are the same people attacking Joe while pretending to care so deeply about Charlie Kirk's legacy. And yet Charlie was saying the very same things Joe Kent is saying now, especially when it came to opposing war with Iran. And that is not speculation. There are receipts. You can find multiple clips of Charlie warning people not to fall for neocon talking points and saying that another war in the Middle East would be catastrophic.
My whole life I've been told that Iran is getting a bomb. Iran is getting a bomb. Iran is getting a bomb. Iran is getting a nuclear bomb. And yet here in 2025, they do not have a nuclear bomb. So why should we trust the American intelligence without verifying it? The evidence shows that every single one of these people, the last couple of decades, that is pushing for a conflict with Iran has not just failed miserably, has been one of the greatest catastrophes in American foreign policy ever. Thousands of lives needlessly lost of Americans, millions of people displaced, trillions of dollars spent. And let's be honest, at this particular moment, we cannot afford this war. We are economically vulnerable. There is massive de-dollarization happening. And now is the time that all of a sudden we want to try to get involved in another endless conflict. Let me be clear. It will not end with just military strikes. If you strike Iran on the interior, you will have
And Charlie saw this danger coming years ago. Back in 2020, he tweeted, "Our future is not in the Middle East. Sand and death will further bankrupt us. No war with Iran." That same year, Charlie issued another warning, writing, "Some are calling for ground war with Iran. This would be a massive mistake. Another ground war with U.S. troops is not the answer. End the endless, senseless wars." Then, in June, just 3 months before he was assassinated, Charlie posted a poll on X asking whether the U.S. should get involved in Israel's war against Iran, and nearly 90% of his followers said no. That same month, Charlie also blasted Lindsey Graham for pushing for war and said Trump needed to resist him.
These guys are they're just a bunch of talkers. They got a big mouth in Iran. Launched against U.S. bases in Iraq, Qatar, and Iran is confirming, of course, they're doing it. We know that. So Lindsey Graham is now saying now it's time to end this madness in Iran. He's just calling for absolute regime change. Mr. President, please, I will call you later with this message, but please resist Lindsey Graham.
But Charlie wasn't just tweeting or talking in interviews.
But Charlie was not just tweeting or sounding off in interviews. He reportedly took his warning straight to the White House, personally making the case against dragging America into yet another endless war that nobody voted for and nobody wants. Charlie reportedly warned the president directly that this would be a disastrous mistake. And Joe Kent has now revealed that he even crossed paths with Charlie in the West Wing, where Charlie's message was said to be the same. This war had to be stopped before it was too late.
Charlie Kirk was one of President Trump's closest advisors, and he also advocated heavily against a war with Iran. He was in the Oval Office in the lead up to the 12-day war. I saw Charlie Kirk on this earth was in June in the West Wing in the stairway, and I said hi to him, and he looked me in the eye, and he said very loudly, and it's a small. You've been in the West Wing. It's small. It's a tight space, and he said, "Joe, stop us from getting into a war with Iran." Very loudly.
He was single-minded.
And he walked off and he went, I believe, into the Oval. So when one of President Trump's closest advisors who is vocally advocating for us to not go to war with Iran and for us to rethink at least our relationship with the Israelis. And then he's suddenly publicly assassinated, and we're not allowed to ask any questions about that. It's a data point. It's a data point that we need to look into.
And what makes this even more disturbing is that they are not merely trying to discredit Joe Kent. They want to see him prosecuted. After the theory started spreading that Joe leaked screenshots of Charlie's messages to Candace, Josh Hammer posted on X, "This is indeed the theory that makes the most sense. The FBI must continue to investigate Joe Kent, and eventually DOJ should prosecute." But this is the same Josh Hammer who was accused of lying about his final communications with Charlie. And this is also the same Josh Hammer who admitted that he and Rabbi Pakwaki had near-daily behind-the-scenes strategy calls with Charlie, including the night before Charlie's assassination.
He did organize this Zoom call the night before he tragically was murdered. So the Utah Valley University event where he tragically was killed, he wanted kind of an hour-long kind of prep call. So it was me, a right-wing rabbi friend of mine who lives in Jerusalem, Pesach Wilicki.
And one more thing. If Joe Kent received these messages from Andrew Kovic and tried to alert the FBI so those leads could be pursued only to be shut down, then those messages were never part of the federal Charlie Kirk investigation in the first place, and therefore would not amount to any leak of classified material. In that case, all Joe Kent did was expose the fact that the government refused to act on behalf of the American people and the truth. But that brings us to the question no one can ignore. Why are Erika and Turning Point panicking this hard? Why would they be so terrified that a former counterterrorism official wants to testify under oath in the Charlie Kirk trial? If they truly want justice for Charlie, if they truly want the truth, then why does sworn testimony scare them so much? You can draw your own conclusions. But one thing is clear.